agenda.
I just asked to share until the other ones come.
Oh, I thought you had just agenda. You don't even have
Good evening,
those?
everybody, and welcome to the February meeting of the CRA Advisory Board in North Miami. Can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Cobo.
Here.
Ms. Cohen is excused. Mr. Each.
Here.
Ms. Estime Irvin. Present. Ms. Geimer.
Present.
Mr. McDermott.
Present.
Dr. Million.
He's excused.
Dr. Moise.
Here.
Mr. Reynolds.
Here.
Mr. Sanchez.
Present.
We have quorum.
Okay. All right, can we please,
Maybe.
all right, for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Before we have the items for review, I believe that Chief Each would like to...
Chief Beige.
Beige.
That's
Beige,
Chief
I mean,
Beige.
Very similar.
Yeah, you look a lot alike.
I'm here in body.
Okay, all right, Chief Beige,
No problem. Good evening.
good evening.
I just wanted to pass along a message from Interim Chief Jariga that there's been a change in security policies for all the city meetings. So it'll be the CRA, the Planning Commission, Board of Adjustment, City Council meeting, and any other major city board meeting, that they will have a metal detector, and everybody coming into the meeting will be checked for weapons.
All right.
And that's it.
There'll be police presence.
Okay, thank you very
No
much.
presence.
What time is it right now? 6:42.
Okay.
Should we leave and come back?
Yeah, it wasn't effective when the meeting started.
Started, yeah.
Chief Beige, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, can we have agenda item number 1?
Yes. Wait,
Approval of the minutes?
no, there are none.
No,
No,
no.
we didn't have a meeting the last time in the previous.
That's why I wasn't here.
Right.
Okay.
To approve the minutes
That's
from
why
before?
it says NA after.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so agenda item number 1?
Extreme Cell T-Mobile Beautification and Enhancement Grant Request. Please find, and first of all, I'd like to apologize the mishap of the missing packets. The rest of them will be coming. I just had a moment today where everything disappeared in my brain. Please find attached a beautification and enhancement grant request from Extreme Cell T-Mobile located at 13090 Northwest 7th Avenue. They are a privately owned business. They sell mobile phones, accessories, and cellular plans. The request is for an enhancement, particularly for security enhancements for their customers and their employees. They were victims during the holidays of several attempted thefts and suffered a lot of damages to the property. Chief Jariga personally went and met with them and provided them some security recommendations, which are included in the grant request, and it's mainly about that unit itself. That strip is owned by Gator Investment. They had received the exterior facade grant from the city through the Northwest 7th Avenue Commercial Grant in May 2014. But this grant request is for the interior and is for security enhancements which are allowed. It was to provide funds to help with security installation with alarm systems, security signs, impact windows and doors. They were damaged at one of the break-ins, and reinforced interior doors, especially towards, I think, the safe or the area where they have their products. All these recommendations were made by Chief Jariga. There are no violations on the property. The total cost of the project is at $28,380. Staff recommends approval of the $25,000 grant with no match requirement, which is part of the Enhancement CRA grant program. Mr. Alon is the business owner. He's here. If you have any questions.
Yeah, would you like to
could
step
come
up to the mic and introduce
right
yourself?
Good evening.
Okay.
My name is Asaf Alon. The business address is 13090 Northwest 7th Avenue, North Miami, Florida 33168. I'm a resident of North Miami myself. I live in 2190 Northeast 122nd Street for the last 17 years. That's me.
Okay. Can you, does anyone have any questions of the gentleman on the grant?
I have to tell you, I'm a landlord, and I've had several phone companies, and they really had a difficult time. I'm very sympathetic. Do you have a cage where you lock up your?
We have safes. The only thing is really we've been targeting for, I would say, the last 3 months more than 5 times, including break-ins, breaking both of the doors and the windows, even though the impact windows. Everything is on me. The landlord don't pay anything. It's on the lease. My deductible and the insurance is so high that I not even trying to use the insurance anymore. We had actually 2 robberies inside the store during the holidays, beside the break-ins. Yeah. So we had the chief of the police came and he gave us some advice as what to do to change all the security cameras, add more security cameras outside to actually help the North Miami police in the future. Add more lights, more security doors.
And I wanted to add, if you look in front in the picture, they already had these yellow bollards in front to keep them
Yeah, we
from
do.
driving through. But they were still able to damage the impact windows and doors trying to break in. Okay?
So, any other
That's a
questions?
shame, because that's a new building that was recently renovated.
Has the police department talked to you about the new system going in?
Yes.
Where the cameras will be connected to the police station?
Yeah, like I said, the chief of the police came to our location and we met with him.
I gotta ask.
Okay, we have a motion to approve a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Career.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
Next item.
agenda item number 2, MII property.
MIA Properties, okay, please find attached a rehabilitation grant request from MIA Properties, Inc., located at 656-686 Northeast 125th Street. It's a building, the blue 2-story building west of us on Northeast 6th Avenue and 125th Street. The property managers are here. They look very familiar to you probably because they are managing properties for IMC Equity throughout where the Dollar Tree is, where the 50 State Security was, and so on and so forth. Their grant request is to upgrade their windows and doors to impact windows and doors, so that they can have more safety and security for their tenants and make it more visibly appealing in the downtown. They provided 3 bids. Violations on this property will be satisfied pending grant agreement because they did get a violation for excessive signage. I don't know if you realize that, but the city code, I didn't know either, but the city code says it's 15% of your
Right.
facade window that needs to be blocked only. Well, if you look at their building, it's a full-on IMC advertisement. So once they replace it with impact windows and doors, it'll eliminate that violation. Total cost of the project is $189,000. Again, since it's a rehab grant, it's 50-50 match. Staff recommends approval of $94,500, which is 50% of the total amount. It will help, like I said, the aesthetics of the downtown and improve the safety for their tenants. Mr. Emilio and Mr. George are here if you have any additional questions, but they're also showing you the renderings of what the impact windows are gonna look like. They're also in the packet.
That's this one here.
Yeah.
Will
Well, no,
the impact
not that
windows, the new ones down
This one, yeah.
on the first floor, are they gonna be
Yeah, it's the
mirror
first floor.
windows?
No, just the image when they did it, they kind of gave it
It's a computer
Yeah.
render.
So they're just gonna be like tinted or something like that?
it comes like with like a light, it's still like see-through, but it
Yeah.
comes with like a light gray, it's called gray glass, so it has like, but we have curtains on the inside,
Right.
and then we're gonna eliminate all that signage, and we're just gonna have one window's gonna have within the 15%, and then the rest are gonna be all clean, so it's nice and, visible, appealing.
Yeah, I thought all those windows, at least the windows upstairs were replaced about 10 years ago.
No.
So this?
I'm sorry, can you say your name and address for the record? I
Yes, George De
apologize.
La Rosa, 696 Northeast 125th Street, North Miami, Florida, 33161.
And Emilio Alvarez, same address, 696 Northeast 125th Street, North Miami.
Any motion, question?
Any questions, the gentleman?
Motion to Motion to accept?
Do I have a second?
Yes.
Second.
All in favor? Okay,
Aye.
gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Third item before you is a rehabilitation grant request from Chef Creole Number 2, Inc. I don't have to even introduce Chef Creole himself. He's been in the community for over 20 years. He's opened several other extensions of Chef Creole throughout the community in City of Miami and Liberty City and so on. And right now, one of his endeavors is to try to be at the MIA airport. We wish him well. But this current grant is to help rehab the existing location on West Dixie, which is 13105 West Dixie Highway. He plans on doing a complete renovation of the property. If you look at the pictures, it looks like I think it's the original ice cream shop that it had there before.
Carvel.
Richard
Carvel.
Carvel.
And
Yeah.
that's the design that he worked with his architect to try to implement. It'll also clean the parking lot, what do you call it, the fence around the trash can, the bathroom enhancements, and so on and so
Paving.
forth. It'll also allow for appropriate seating outside, out front, because right now it doesn't have a buffer, it doesn't have a welcoming area for outside seating. So with these improvements, he's gonna be able to do that. He's provided 3 bids, of course, and the lowest bid is $249,795. The only request is that Chef Creole is requesting a waiver of the 50% match requirement to a 65-35%, meaning our grant would cover 65% of the cost and he would cover 35% of the cost. So the total cost, as you know, for a rehabilitation grant, the cap is at $100,000. And he would have to come up with the 35% in addition and all the other costs associated extra to make this rehab grant happen. This obviously will be a positive improvement on West Dixie. We need to see more visible improvements along that corridor. So staff recommends approval, and like I said, Chef Creole is here if you have any questions. He did not bring us any samples this time, unfortunately. But
How much is this gonna cost us? $100,000?
$100,000.
I thought you mentioned that the total cost of the party is 200 and...
He's gonna work with, that was the bids that he got. He's gonna work with, he's already talked to the contractor and he's gonna try to work with him based on what the approval is here now. All right? So you're,
I move to approve $100,000.
Any questions from anybody?
This is what it's gonna look like?
this is what it's projected to look like, yes.
It is a major improvement.
Do we have a second?
Yes.
Okay, do we have any discussion on the item? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Good evening.
See you soon.
Yes.
Congratulations.
5:30 Tuesday. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Just gotta remind you.
Guys, thank you so much.
you.
Have a good evening.
Good luck.
The next item, I'm gonna defer to my colleague in the procurement department, Mr. Phil Ford. Oh, and Mr. Destrade is in the audience. Thank you for coming.
Our department is here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dr. Murray? How are you?
Good evening, committee members. I'm Philip Ford, the Assistant Director of Purchasing for the City of North Miami. And the item before you is a partnership with FIU, the Metropolitan Center, to do a study on the affordable housing, workforce housing in the city. And that assessment will also include a strategy for the city to improve its housing conditions. This is a part of the comprehensive plan that says every so often these types of studies should be done. The study, a copy of the proposal is included in the agenda item. It's slated to take 3 months to complete at a cost of $36,000. The final study, Rasha, help me with this. Are you going to bring it back
Yes.
to the CRA just for FYI? Okay, so the final study will be returned to you guys for your review once it has been completed.
So just for you, the information, this is something that Tanya Wilson-Sajur, the planning and housing director and myself, we worked on. As you know, our CRA plan and our new interlocal calls for affordable housing, workforce housing, and a plan for us to distribute the funds. Tanya and I, upon discussion and after the approval of the LDR plan and the comp plan, it calls for us to do a proper assessment. And we've actually never done a real inventory and assessment of our housing stock here in the city. And she met with Dr. Murray, who's here to talk to you if you have any questions. He's done it for Miami-Dade County, Broward County, so he's an expert in this. And the original concept was to focus on affordable housing, but since, as you know, the CRA plan calls for a mixed income, and we want to make sure that there's a lot of workforce housing inventory as well, we incorporated that into this plan. So he will be providing us with a report so that we have the actual facts of what's our housing stock, what should be our priority, how do we properly, plan out to bring proper affordable housing, rehab housing, and workforce housing into our community to help our constituents. So the total cost of the contract is $36,000, and like I said, Dr. Murray is here from FIU Metropolitan Center if you have any questions. He's an expert in housing assessments.
Dr. Murray, would you like to come up and introduce yourself?
Good evening.
Good evening. You just introduce your doctor.
Yes, I'm Ned Murray. I'm the Associate Director of the FIU Metropolitan Center.
Oh, okay. And you say you've done some of these studies before with...
Yeah, I would... the Metropolitan Center has probably done most of the affordable housing studies in South Florida since going back to the bubble of 2005, over the last 13 years. As was just mentioned, county governments, municipal governments, from Palm Beach to the Keys, we've been doing most of those studies, partly because of the approach and methodology that we take is to really look at your economy first, because that's really what drives the market in terms of demand. People who actually live here and work here, that's who we focus on, their occupations, their wages, and then how does that translate into the housing market. And obviously, as you all know, Miami-Dade and South Florida more generally as a very, very hot and dynamic housing market. It's been that way basically since the recovery, and so we're kind of going back to where we were 12 years ago with the bubble in terms of cost of housing. Rents have gone skyrocketing, so that there's a lot going on around you, but we want to be able to focus on the city of North Miami, capture some of that dynamics and meet the needs of your residents, at the same time trying to create that kind of housing choice and look that the city would so desire.
So this is going to be a study of both affordable and marketplace and
Workforce.
market rate workforce?
Yes, and we really need, and to do that, we really need to look at the larger market itself. What are the driving factors in terms of housing, and how does that impact affordable workforce housing, and how can we provide for that? How can we provide for that demand? And of course, North Miami has a significant demand. As you all know, you have one of the highest levels of cost burden renters in the county, very high poverty rate. But at the same time, I'm sure like many other communities, particularly along the I-95 corridor, you have an older housing stock, and that housing stock needs to be preserved, because that's probably the best asset you can have in terms of potentially affordable housing.
Anybody have any questions?
I have a question. Is this the entire city of North Miami, or just the CRA part of North Miami?
It's primarily the CRA, but it's the city, because we need to know what's,
And we could actually compare, we've done that before in Boynton Beach and other places where we've actually highlighted the CRA and the larger city.
And I actually did ask for them to focus on the major corridors where the multifamilies are, all the CRA corridors that have the large multifamily and other types of
You're talking about
housing.
apartment buildings?
Yeah, for assessment and inventory.
We have a huge inventory of older houses.
Yes, you do.
When you say older housing, you're talking about apartments
Yes, anything that's...
or residential R1s, or where are we at? Dr.?
Well, really both. You want to be able to address both levels of multifamily and single family. And as you all know, you know, along the I-95 corridor from all the way going up into even Broward and Palm Beach, this is the older established housing in South Florida, and it's now aged, and we were very concerned when Hurricane Irma was originally coming up the I-95 corridor before it moved away, what would happen, you know, to this older housing, because a lot of it does not meet code, as you know. So looking at it on a number of different levels, not just in terms of being affordable, but also safe and decent, that's going to be, you know, a highlight of not only this study, but all the studies we're doing right now is really kind of focusing on the age and condition of the properties as well.
So what would you do? You take an overall inventory of what the apartments are in the city?
Yes.
You look at the age, the rents, the income level? You know,
Yes, and look at the larger market and how your inventory can essentially become an asset to you, not only to the community at large, but certainly to the residents. Because it is, the fact that you have this existing housing stock, whether it be single family or multifamily, it really is an asset. It's just that it's older now, and we're going to have to look at it much differently than we did even 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're also going to look at the up-and-coming inventory of apartments that are coming
That's
through,
right.
through the permitting and so on.
yes,
Look at-
that's kind of nice, but I haven't seen any apartments coming through other than maybe one or two projects. And you know, correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, I think we need a balance, you know.
Yes.
I mean, I'm glad that you're going to do this inventory. I think it's absolutely necessary. But you can't have the whole city as affordable housing. If you do, you're doomed.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, you know, and maybe those are harsh words, but that's the reality of life. You need people with disposable income to increase your tax base to pay for your goods and services. I said this before, I'd rather have a wealthy city helping poorer people than a poor city helping nobody. So I'm glad that you're doing this, and are we gonna have any input into this? Are you gonna be meeting with the citizens, or how do you do this?
Well, normally
What's the methodology?
Yeah, well, normally we do the analysis, and then we do a preliminary assessment, and that we'd like to share with the community at first before we go further, particularly since we're going to be doing strategies in this case as well. We want to make sure that everyone understands what the market analysis shows us, so you know what's going on in your community and what some of those factors and conditions are. So we share that with you, and then we go from there. That's typically the way we do it, and we find that usually it's very enlightening to be able to really know what's here, like you said, to know that inventory, but also know what some of the market dynamics are, and where do you want to be, not just now, but 10 years down the road.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you, sir. Anybody else have any questions?
Yes, by the way, all of the information is right in here. It's described exactly the scope of the work. No, it doesn't have a page, but it's included in the package. How long will the work take, the study? How long do you think?
I believe we proposed that 90 days, I believe, yeah.
Really listen well.
Think you could do it in 9
I'm
days?
sorry. Oh, no, you
Oh,
said, I
yes.
thought you said, I thought you said 9 days.
No, well, we've been asked to
get my
do
hearing
it
aid.
shorter one before,
Turn it
but.
on, turn it on, right.
Gee.
Okay, does anyone else have any other questions? If
Move for
none,
approval.
Okay, move to approve. There's a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So the next two items, I'm going to ask for our CRA attorney to provide me with some backup and the historical perspective, because I know Mr. Each had some questions. So the first item is the loan forgiveness of first-time home buying and rehab grant program that was initiated in 2008. In their 2005 CRA plan that was approved by the board and mandated all residential programs be established as loans. Unlike the cities and even the county's program where if you lived in the property after a certain number of years, for the city it's after 7 years, then it becomes a forgivable loan and the city forgives it and writes it off. Between 2008 and 2009, the CRA funded 9 loans totaling $450,000 with 10-year maturity and bearing interest at 3%. One of the loans foreclosed in 2014 and has been written off. The new amended CRA plan, the 2016 CRA plan, allows for future housing initiatives to follow the city's housing guidelines. And as such, all future programs would be forgivable loans upon a certain number of years and that the person has resided in. These 8 properties remain under the original plan rules and would require board approval to be forgiven. Staff recommends approval of this item to be consistent with the city's housing rules, converting loans to grants once the person has lived in the house for 7 years, to alleviate the burden of these property owners as they still qualify as low-income residents, and despite the steady growth in values, these properties are still underwater. And I've attached for you to see the properties, at how much they were bought at and what their assessed value is at now. Also, I did check with the city's housing department. Some of these properties, when they were bought, they did get a grant from the city side apart from this loan. The city's loans have already been forgiven in 2015, 2016, and the other 2 will be forgiven also in 2018 this year, August in 2018. So we're asking you, because right now these properties are in limbo. Moving forward, any other first-time home buying program that we create, even the city's rehab grant that we just funded, it has a lien on the property for 7 years. So after 7 years, it is forgiven. These are not. These mature after 10 years, which means as of August 2018, we should be asking them for payment, and there's a 3% interest
And we
on
will
it.
foreclose, we should be foreclosing if they don't do it, right?
Yeah.
Well, we have the
But-
ability to foreclose.
Right, right.
But, I mean, there's a primary mortgage on it as well. I mean, we were secondary to it, right, Mr. Zelkowitz?
Yeah, typically the CRA is in a second position or even a third position to the institutional lender's financing. So if we were to foreclose on the property, you know, we'd have to take out the first lender in order to, so we'd have to pay off the first lender in order to get possession of the property, which is, and I'll just say, you know, and it's not a legal issue, from a policy standpoint, that's not what the CRA is really trying to do here. And we're trying to help people get into homes. And I've always, since the beginning, when Siskin prepared his original plan, you know, couldn't understand why they didn't put grants in for residential. They have grants for commercial, but they didn't have any grants for residential properties. So we were stuck with doing loans. We did the loans, and we all know what happened with the you know, the housing market during the recession. So you know, these folks are still underwater. It's a burden for them. I've seen other CRAs do the same thing, where they end up writing off, and as our institutional lenders do, writing off bad loans. They constantly do that to certain requirements with the federal government. So we're just trying to, I think, basically what, Rasha, clean up the books here. Rasha?
I'm sorry?
Trying to clean up the books.
Yes.
Get this off the balance sheet. These folks have lived in the homes for the requisite number of years. We've accomplished our goal of, you know, putting them into permanent housing. So it's really not a question of forcing them to pay us back, or, I mean, they've been trying, and
Well, no, so this is the first time home buying one, and every year they have to provide us with their income taxes and income verification. We send them a letter, they send their proof of insurance on the property and their income verification, and they are still low-income families. It's just, like I said, it would be a serious burden for us to come to them now and say, you know, you need to
Give us the money.
pay this loan, when the city side has already been written off and forgiven.
You understand?
Are
Okay, we
these
have a-
properties occupied?
Yes,
So-
they're all, I'm sorry.
We have a question, I'm sorry, Mr. Sanchez?
Yeah, I would like to say that if we have the opportunity to be helping business, why we cannot be helping homeowners?
I agree.
I propose that we give those people a break. I was watching, looking at the address, and there is a address that is almost near to mine, 12120 or 12190, Northeast 11 place.
2120.
I know that lady, and they are not in good shape. It's better for us to try to help the homeowners.
Well,
I just
I-
don't, I
I-
just don't think that it was intended to work this way. It was intended to be a forgivable
Yeah,
loan,
but-
and that's how all of them work. I mean, I know a lot of, I think most cities, CRAs, that's the way it works. It works as a forgivable grant. How we got into this, catch-22 kind of thing is, but, we can get out of it, obviously. We have the ability to do that, so I think we ought to, forgive these, or at least modify, I guess is the correct word?
No, we're forgiving the loans.
Just forgiving the
Yep.
loans?
Yes.
Okay,
I
Same thing
propose
that the
that.
city has done on their side.
okay.
I would like-
I gotta ask you a question. I'm a little confused on this chart. I'm not gonna mention any names, but on the first one on the top of the page, that was foreclosed in 2014?
Yeah.
Okay, now the rest of them are not foreclosed?
No.
Okay, so the difference between the city is, let me see if I got this clear. The city and the county offer grants.
And the CRA, yeah.
Okay,
Well, they
we
offer-
offer grants for housing, right?
First-time home buying.
First time home buyer, okay. So run me through this drill here again, forgive me. If a house goes, let's say, for $200,000, what does that prospective buyer do?
So,
Property comes up for $200,000, they come to the city gives a grant.
Well, they usually get an institutional mortgage to start off with.
yeah, they work
Yes,
with
sir.
the bank,
Bank.
they work with the city, it was the CRA and the county for
Right.
like the closing
And-
costs.
Right, and part of the
And-
closing is, part of the closing is, when you do the closing, it shows the money that you were able to get to close whatever the market, whatever the market value is, or the sales price of the house.
So if a house goes for $200,000, they'll go to the bank. And the bank will say, okay, we'll loan you the money, proviso, how,
If a house is worth 2,000, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Attorney, if the house sells for say the house is for 200,000.
okay,
Okay, and the bank says, we're gonna give you 100,000.
okay.
Depending upon the fact that you're able to get subsequent financing to purchase the house. And then it becomes part of a
So
package.
they go through a first-time home buying,
Right.
because I don't know if you were
Classes and
there
that
then, and I wasn't there either, but when reading through the files, they had to go through a home buying counseling, credit
I remember,
counseling,
but
and so
I'd like
on
to
and
say,
so
refresh
forth.
me on this, please.
Yeah, so they went through the whole counseling program and so on, and obviously the properties had to be within the city and the CRA. Again, it was at the height of the market, so the values were higher than most. They did get $100,000 mortgages or a little bit more, and so the city provided a $20,000 to $25,000 grant. The county provided like $7,500 to $10,000 that I've seen.
How much?
$7,500 to $10,000.
That's out of the surtax money.
Yeah,
Right.
and then the CRA fund they were doing $50,000
So then
loans.
so the county, the city, and then the CRA all contribute.
Contributed, and then
Okay.
they paid for the mortgage, that would have been like 100, 120 based on their income
So
verification
they have to
and
come
so
in
on.
with a downstroke. They have to come in
Very
with money
small
also.
one.
Very
So-
strong.
So let me explain. The fact is, the people who are buying these are affordable buyers. So they can't afford, like perhaps a market person. Let's say the house is $200,000 and they're gonna borrow 80% of that. Okay, that's like $160,000.
Okay.
And they have to come up with a $40,000 down payment, right? That's how it usually works. These people, A, don't have $40,000, and B, based on their income, can't support a mortgage of $160,000. So based upon that, since they're a first-time home buyer, and our goal is to put people into homes, they will borrow less. They'll borrow, like Rasha said, $100,000. That's what they can afford on a
Okay.
monthly basis when it comes to their principal, their taxes, and their insurance, and their interest payments. So the rest, the next tranche of 100,000 is provided by, and it was typically the CRA, and the city didn't do this, they didn't do both. It was one or the other, either the city or the CRA. So the CRA would put in 50, so there's 150. Then the county would put in some money from their surtax fund. And then these people would have to come up with maybe $10,000 to buy a house.
Okay.
And go through the counseling, the first-time homebuyer counseling, understand what it means, to have to make these payments and everything. And then we were able to put people who normally wouldn't
Gotcha,
be
okay.
able to afford to buy that house, to be able to afford to buy that house.
Okay. Now, the portion that you want to forgive, why do we want to forgive it? Have they been making the payments on it?
They have not been making payments because it didn't call for payment. It called for a maturity in 10 years with a 3% interest.
So in other words, they would make the payment in 2000?
So they would owe $50,000 all at once.
Okay,
People
so
might-
what you're saying is, what you want to do is you want to take that 50,000 and you want to make that a grant instead of a loan. Is that what we're,
Basically.
to keep this in, okay.
You're forgiving the loan.
There
Yeah.
is one other piece, though.
You got
Is
it.
that the value of the house has fallen. So even if the house was sold, it would never.
We wouldn't get our money
it would
back.
never-
I-
it would
okay.
never pay
I,
it
you
back.
know, because it's okay, it makes sense, but I think if the citizens are watching this, we have an obligation to let everybody know what this is about. I mean, it's like saying, okay, I can go out and get a house in the city of North Miami's gonna pay for it, and Sim Lloyd, that's it, I'm not gonna pay it back. And that, at first blush, I'm gonna be honest with you, at first blush, that's what it sounds like. Hey, I'm gonna get a house, I don't have to pay it back, Sim Lloyd, that's Vietnamese, we're so sorry. Okay, but it's not what it is, okay, so, like, thank you.
And
Thank you.
because of the age of these, they need to be.
Instead of having an abandoned house out there, what you're actually accomplishing is you're letting people live there that hopefully can build their lives and accomplish something and occupy the home where it doesn't become derelict. So, and it is a good part to that.
And since these
And that's
are,
what-
and if these were grants anyway, they'd be at the age
Mhm.
they'd be forgiven. So since they're at that age anyway, rather than
Okay.
trying to whop them at the end with something that's unexpected.
My
just
first
go ahead
instinct was saying no, but now you clarified it and I think everybody's
Please
on
say
board.
yes.
And in other words, Mr. Each, if they had borrowed, if they had gone to the city, they wouldn't owe the money. But instead they came to the CRA and we weren't able to do that
Okay.
at the time. But we can do that now.
We will do it.
I have a follow-up question. Assuming the value of the house has increased, then what would happen?
The one on the bottom.
For this one, because you're saying that the value of the house usually is, went down anyway. So if you take the other way around, if the value of the house has increased, so what would, you wouldn't?
We had a formula on the loan documents that if it was within, I believe, the first 7 years, which is the time frame that you want them to stay in the house, if they had sold the house for a profit,
Right.
the CRA would have gotten its loan back,
Plus
okay?
33%.
And they would have gotten a piece of the upside.
33% of the profit.
Because we're not there to provide people with
Slipping
the ability to flip and make a profit.
Exactly. I motion that. I was the one who fight for that. I second.
Okay, so
You wanna,
all right,
you
made
wanna
a
make the motion, baby?
No, you make a motion.
Oh, I made the motion. I made it.
Here we
You
go.
All right,
second
any
that.
further
Okay.
discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, moving on to our last item, which is
Last item, resolution to approve the forgiveness, Mr. Each, of the foreclosure prevention loan program. Again, another program that was created because at the time, in 2009, there were several properties going into foreclosure. Again, the CRA and the city created a foreclosure prevention program which helped some low-income residents avoid foreclosure proceedings. Payments were made directly to the banks to avoid getting foreclosed on. These loans were to be repaid starting in 2014 for 36 months with 0 interest. One loan was foreclosed on and has been written off. To date, we've collected $9,331.29, but the remaining balance has been very difficult to recoup, and at this point, we cannot recoup it. These 7 properties remain under the original plan again, which would require board approval to be forgiven. I've attached a spreadsheet for you to see the payments. These families, since 2014, since the reorganization, when we found this, I've been talking to them, working with them. It got to the point where it was $10 a month, just payments, and some of them are still unemployed, and it's still an issue. So we're asking you to forgive the foreclosure prevention loan.
And what you're asking us to write off is 17,000?
Yes, $737.34.
How about I'm looking at some of these people, they paid off the loans.
Yeah, one of them is because she
Why do you
sold
want
her
to forgive her?
house.
Why don't we extend the terms on it? I mean,
They're not able to pay them. The one that paid them off is because the house was sold, and it was part of the deal. These other families that are living in these homes cannot repay the loans. They're either unemployed, underemployed, and they're not able to make any payments.
So
You
these
know,
are both sold.
I don't mind helping people, but you're going back to square one. It's like the housing market. We go out, we buy a $2 million house, and we're only making $10,000 a year, and the next thing we know, all of these houses go into foreclosure, and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will wonder. I mean, God bless these people. It just seems to me that we could either lower the terms, or we could either extend the payments, or keep it on the books until they get employed, or lower it, or, you know, I mean, is my bank gonna do that for me, if I can't pay my mortgage?
Yes.
They might, yeah.
Yeah, but
They will write
There's
it
a lot
off.
of programs the federal government has too.
But look,
It costs more
about
money to try
this,
to recoup the money than actually.
this thing is
getting them
better,
paid.
way better, because we are helping people. It's better than Mardi Gras. Why don't you stand up and begin complaining about that for like 3 months with our stoppings? Let's say yes.
I think it's a practical matter.
Let's say yes.
Just as a practical
This
matter,
go to the
to help
people.
them and to clear up our books. And Rasha really shouldn't be spending her time trying to collect $10 a month.
Exactly.
I mean,
So that's what I think.
it's a small amount of 17,000, but,
Buy a house.
I mean, why don't we just change it to a grant and say, let's give them a grant, give people a house, I mean, I don't
Well,
know.
that's
To
what
me,
we-
I just think sometimes, you know, we go so far one way that we forget that people have to stand on their own 2 feet, get a job, and pay for a house, I mean,
And that's what they
what
will
are we
be
gonna
doing,
do, just give everybody
like
a house?
everybody else, but when this plan was created, it was not created with a proper exit for them.
It was a very desperate time.
It was. I mean, if
It
you
was
look
an
back,
extraordinary time.
this was all back in 2009 when the recession
That was a horrible,
Yeah.
horrible time.
was at its height.
Market went down.
And unfortunately, you know, a lot of people were not in a position to make, and the city.
Yeah, I understand
The
that.
city tried to do what they could to assist these people to stay in their homes, which is what we're trying to do now, and trying to help forgive, which is really a small amount of money in comparison. And I agree with Clark, I think it's silly that we've now become a debt collector. We have better things to do with Rosh's time and everybody else's time, as well as the fact that we're trying to help stabilize the neighborhoods and try and keep these people in their homes.
Maybe we just shouldn't do it again, that's all.
Exactly.
That same
Or do
way,
it in
yeah.
another way.
Another
Do
way,
it in
right.
another way.
Well, I think that the procedure was possibly wrong.
Was flawed, yeah.
It was flawed, just like the money that we forgave on these homes. You know, rather than saying stay in the house in 7 years and it's forgiven, they became, it became a balloon mortgage, which was not really what the intention was. So I think we need to, we need to really rethink going forward how we go through the process with these kinds of.
And Mr. Chair, just to say then, that's what we are doing now, we're just cleaning the books.
Right.
What we're cleaning is the items that were created by the 2005 plan. The 2016 plan doesn't have any issues like that anymore.
Right.
It is following the cities and the counties' best practices and guidelines, which would have, let's say, a 7-year forgivable or a 5-year forgivable, with same requirements.
How do these people pay the taxes and the water bill? And, you know, I mean, God bless them, they're in these houses, are they getting assistance to pay the water bill, their taxes? How are they maintaining these homes?
Their taxes are probably $400 a year.
Yeah.
And how-
Their water bill's probably higher than what their taxes are.
So, Mr. Chairman, just when we did this program, I remember because I was here, just to go back to your question, Mr. Each. So what we tried to do as well was get a number of law firms to represent these homeowners on a pro bono basis to go to the federal government, because they had programs where they would modify your mortgages. Because if you recall, the whole housing issue
The
was,
whole housing bubble.
you know, they were giving out loans and they were inflating the prices. And these people bought houses that were not worth what they paid for them. So they ended up with a house that was worth half of what it was worth in 2009, but a mortgage that was, you know, paying for a house that was worth double. And that's where they were running into trouble. So I remember we took on one case, a woman named Helene St. Ange, We went into the federal government, we got $200,000 taken off the principal of her mortgage, had them lower the interest rates, because I don't know if you remember the interest rates back then, everyone had like these adjustable mortgages.
Yeah.
They were going up to 7, 8, 9, 10%. And these people were getting foreclosed on, and the whole point was to help them for a short period of time. It was, I think, a $5,000 loan.
No more. It was like 4,000. The most was
And
4,000.
to just give them some relief, some time, so that they could get a lawyer, get someone to help them, and go get their mortgage modified.
Okay. I have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Aye.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, we move right along to our CRA attorney. Anything to report?
Oh, did we do the downtown traffic or officer duty? Or?
That's coming up.
Oh, okay. All I wanted to mention was the legislature's in session. There is a bill which makes a lot of changes to the CRA statute. I'm not going to go through all of them because we don't know if it's going to pass. It's passed the House. It's in the Senate having some issues. But one of them that affects you directly is that you would probably need to get some ethics training
4 hours.
at some point.
I think we should.
Again?
No, 4 hours. They're putting a number to it.
I think you did some at the beginning, but this would be on an annual basis
Yeah.
going forward.
We need to do 4
Yeah, we gotta
hours.
do it, yeah, with it.
Yeah.
4
Once
hours
every
of
18,
training.
what the heck, over on the boards, how does that, was it once a year we had to do it, I think? Yeah.
Mhm.
Or the city clerk will let us know when they've made arrangements with the Ethics Commission for these trainings or whenever they're doing them in the area. So, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to mention that we are looking for new board members to help us to add
I
to
was
the.
gonna mention
Okay, good. If you could do that, and after that, Chief Page?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that if anyone here on the board knows anyone who would really be interested in serving on the board, we have several vacancies,
The CRA board.
the CRA board, advisory board, so if you know anybody, please let Rasha
3.
know. Yeah. Chief Page,
Ready? Well, good evening again. I know I'm at the very end, and I'm always the last person that stands between you and the exit, so I'll try and make it brief. And the attorney's already ready to go out.
I'm not even here.
Just the usual report that I'll give you, I'll start with the downtown CRA officer first. And this report will cover the period from October 1st through December 31st. It's the first quarter of the new fiscal year. During that time, they made contact with 620 businesses in the downtown area and actively engaged the workers in conversation relating to the security of the downtown area. They performed 115 business checks, 1,000 parking lot checks, and answered 9 calls for service. And they interacted with 1,361 visitors to the downtown area. For the crime report for the downtown area, there were 9 crimes reported during the previous 3-month period, which was July through September. And during this 3-month period, there were only 6 crimes reported in the downtown area. Of these crimes, they're all crimes of opportunity. There was one violent crime which occurred not during the CRA hours. It was at 1 a.m. and it was an attempt robbery at the ATM at the 900 block of 125 Street. But that was at 1 in the morning. And we also looked at that as a crime of opportunity.
Was that at the Bank of America?
Yes. And the big thing, there was one theft, a vehicle burglary, another vehicle burglary, and a stolen car that was left on the swale for 2 weeks. So as you can see, they were mostly all crimes of opportunity in the downtown area. So there was minimal crime to report for the downtown area. For the West Side CRA operations, the officers for the same time period made 350 business contacts. They performed 639 business checks, 624 parking lot checks, answered 7 calls for service, and interacted with 617 people on the west side. There was a little bit more crime on the west side. There were 33 Part 1 crimes reported in the corridor, with 14 of them occurring during the hours of the CRA officers worked. Of the 33, 29 were property crimes, so they were thefts or burglaries. And of the 29, 12 of them were shoplifting calls, 8 which occurred at the CVS. The officers have worked extensively with the management of CVS, and it's almost come to the point now when the CRA officer comes in, they basically report the shopliftings, even though they occurred at other times. So they're really trying to work with the management of CVS to try and do some stuff there to cut down the numbers. They did have success at the 7-Eleven, the new 7-Eleven that opened across the street. 3 months ago, they were nearing double digits for the shoplifting and the thefts. And this reporting period, they only had 1 shoplifting at the 7-Eleven. So they've really increased the presence of 7-Eleven, worked with the management, and we've gotten a lot of cooperation from the 7-Eleven. So that was very successful for the CRA officers at the 7-Eleven.
Well, that's very good.
Or they
Very
moved to
good.
another
Thank you very
city.
much.
There was two other.
Something came up earlier in reference to the cameras, you know, that camera program?
That's the grand finale, Mike. You're letting me out a little bit early. We're gonna build to the camera program.
Oh, okay.
But since you brought it up, the camera program, yes, it's on board. It'll be the North Miami Connect program. I've been working with Rasha. We've gotten pretty much all the back office, all the internal stuff. Now we have to work on the marketing and logo and branding of the program. And we hope to push that through in this quarter, and sometime during this quarter have that out. Comcast actually has a business, they contacted me today, that wants to sign up with us. Because if you're a Comcast business customer and you have cameras at your business, those can directly tie into our system. So if you're already a Comcast customer, those cameras can tie in. Or if you want to actually place cameras at a business, our intention is not to take over the security of a business and security cameras for a business, but it's to enter into basically a public-private partnership with the businesses where they could put 1 or 2 cameras in a public-private area, maybe in a parking lot, at the front door, the back door. At a smaller business, you could probably put 1 camera on the inside and 1 camera on the outside and cover your whole business. And you would have access to the cameras 24/7 over a mobile app. The police department could also tie into the cameras for viewing of live-time, real-time information. So if we get a call in the neighborhood or in the area, we can pull up the camera to see what's actually going on as we respond. And we could also establish a virtual patrol where from time to time we could turn on that camera just to see what's going on in the area. It wouldn't be monitored 24/7 by the police department, but there'd be random monitoring of the camera. And if a call went out in the area, we could pull up live footage to give officers real-time intelligence. And the big thing that a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of times when we get a call at a business, a lot of times the person working the business doesn't have access to the DVR. So sometimes there can be a day or two turnaround for us to get the information off the DVR, which really hinders our investigation. With this system, we'd be able to pull up the pictures instantly. So we could put a flyer out in real time. So as the guy is still walking down the street or is still in the neighborhood, we could pass out the flyer to our officers, or even push out a flyer through social media to people in the neighborhood so we could identify the person a lot quicker or locate witnesses that may still be in the area. So that is definitely something that is full speed ahead, and we look to sometime in this quarter to try and push it out.
Do you actually have do you actually have anything up and running yet?
We have the Comcast that's gonna come on Friday, and we're gonna put cameras on our traffic trailers. So within the next month or so, we should have them on our, maybe 2 months depending on how the ordering goes. We should have them on our, the speed trailers, the traffic speed trailers you see? What they say like your speed is.
Yeah.
You know,
So
Clark, the
a
ones
lot
that
of
always say slow
agencies-
down?
Yes, a lot of agencies have put cameras on their speed trailers because it basically allows us to put them out and serve 2 purposes. And one is to monitor speed and provide speed, but also to surveil areas. A lot of the times they'll put them out near a construction site or something else. So if there's thefts, vandalism that's going on, not only do you get the speed feedback, but now you can also have surveillance in an area. BSO is very big on putting cameras on their speed trailers and using them for dual purposes.
That's
How big of an area does it cover?
Couple that with the facial recognition.
What's that?
You know.
Yeah.
The cameras are stationary. The cameras wouldn't rotate
How
or
much
pan
would
or
you,
zoom.
how much would you be able to see?
Depending on what camera you got, I mean, the cameras, when we looked at pricing wise for a camera to come into the program, you're probably talking between $250 at the low end to $1,000 for a camera on the high end. And then depending on where you came into the market, would probably depend on what field of view and everything else you had on the camera.
Oh, okay.
How do you, with those items that track the speed, they're mobile though, right?
Yeah, because
How do you hook them up?
it'd be cellular based. So the camera can go to anything that has an internet connection. So on the trailer, they'd be a cellular based. Or if we wanted to, we can maybe go radio frequency and we can go directly from the trailer to the big tower you see on top of City Hall.
Right.
But they'd probably be cellular based is probably the route we would take. At the businesses, they would tie into their existing internet connection, and then you'd have access to the camera over the internet.
So I have several locations I'd like to put cameras like right now.
We can talk.
I've talked to you about it for the last 6
I know,
months.
for months, and we had to do a lot of background, and we had to get an agreement signed with the city attorney's office, a hold harmless agreement,
Okay.
which we now have in hand. So if you're the business that wants to sign up, you sign up, and basically it outlines the scope for the business, and it outlines the scope for the police department, and what our responsibilities are, and what your responsibilities are for these systems. So we did a lot of background work below the surface.
So we're
finally
ready to
get
go?
this. We are, Rasha, 99.9%.
Very cool, yeah.
You know, there are areas in the city which people constantly dump garbage, debris, what have you, over there by the railroad tracks, on San Souci, so forth and so on. Could this application be used at these areas?
It could, because remember, this is a public-private partnership. So for the public-private partnership, we would have to find a business that was over there that'd be willing to install a camera and then allow us access to the camera.
No, like, okay, so
So that's how,
a public-private, so how about a resident? Could a resident,
Anybody could, as long as you had power and an internet connection, you could tie into our system. So that's the requirements, power, internet, and then you could tie in. The traffic trailer that we talked about for the speed, we could technically put our traffic trailer out there that would have the camera on there.
Yeah,
so
I
we
mean-
could monitor the area.
that would be a good deterrent. You know, I see it, especially in areas of the CRA where there's a lot of dumping going on. Just they dump it out there, and poor people look out, and the next thing you know, they see a bunch of roof shingles and construction material and all that other stuff, especially by the railroad tracks, and they take off and.
Well, he's giving you an answer.
Yeah.
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 So it's yes and yes.
Okay. Anything else,
And the license plate reader.
The license plate reader is in the final stages with purchasing. We have to we're in the final stages of drafting an RFP. And once the RFP goes out, we will move forward with the purchasing of license plate readers at probably 5 to 6 various locations from the west to the east.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, being that there's nobody here from the public who would like to speak, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yeah, I do.
Do I hear a second?
Please.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Hey, Bob, let me give you this.